So welcome to our Wednesday Breathe class. I'm Caroline, for those who haven't met me before. I've been teaching this for a while now, I've lost track. So really welcome to come to lying down or finding a comfortable seated position, depending on how your energy levels are. So I realise some people will be in bed, but if you can have some support underneath your knees, that's really, really helpful. So it just allows the lower back and the deeper abdominal muscles to relax. So if you are in bed, having some support under the knees. And for those who suffer with POTS at the moment, or you've got long COVID, or any dizziness, vertigo, anything like that, making sure your head is higher or level with your heart. So you may find that you want to prop your head up a little if you come to lying down, or even have a little bit of an angle. If you're coming to seated, most importantly, finding this sense of hips being level with or higher than our knees. Why is that important? Simply to allow the diaphragm to move down. If our knees are really high up, our diaphragm can't move down because our belly can't move out. So we want to make sure we've got space for the diaphragm to move. Your position might be very different to mine. You're welcome to come seated on a chair. Perhaps you have your knees on the floor, like me. Maybe your legs are just simply in a cross-leg position, or maybe you're kneeling really welcome, and some height under your glutes under your sitting boards. Kneeling can be really helpful as well. Take a moment to maybe roll through the shoulders. If you're seated, if you're lying down, you might like to simply shrug your shoulders a couple of times, just releasing there for a moment. And perhaps beginning to soften your gaze or close your eyes. If my speaker is picking up a sort of funny little kind of whirring sound, there's some workmen outside, so that's that sound in the background, if you can hear it. As we often do in this class, particularly releasing through your jaws. So that could look like opening your mouth wide, pretending to yawn, or it could be pushing in and around the cheek. So pushing into one cheek with your tongue, rolling your tongue around to the other side, and taking that a couple of times, maybe even changing direction. So a sense of softening into your jaw area. Hands resting wherever feels comfortable for you to begin with today. Lips gently sealed, and beginning to breathe in and out through your nose. So nasal breathing, essential for overall mental health and physical health. There's a few reasons for this, and I'll run through them today just as a gentle reminder. The nasal hairs in our nostrils that capture any dust or pollution, pollen, anything we don't really want in our lungs. And the nasal cavities, moistening our inhalation, so making it a little bit more wet really for our lungs. The blood vessels in our nostrils and our nasal cavities warming our inhalation, ready for the lungs as well. And in our nasal cavities, there are pockets of nitric oxide, and this is simply a gas that cleanses our breath, cleanses our inhalation. It's antibacterial, antimicrobial, so that's cleansing the breath and supporting our lungs. And as we breathe in through our nose, there's a very different feeling to the airflow and to the pressure. So you'll know if you've ever taken a big breath through the mouth compared to a breath through the nose. There's simply a different pressure to the inhalation. Today we're going to begin to focus on breathing light. So this is likely to create that feeling of air hunger. So if you're able to tolerate a little bit of air hunger, so that's that feeling of needing to take a deeper breath, stay with it. But as with all my classes, I want to encourage you to take it at your own pace. So if that feeling of needing to take a deeper breath, that air hunger feeling, is strong in any way, taking a break, pausing, coming back to just simply noticing and following your breath. So we're not trying to create any sort of stress in our body. So really beginning to tune into that. If the air hunger arises, if it's a tolerable level, staying with it. If there's that sense of becoming anxious around it or just needing that real need to take a bigger breath, pausing, changing the breath in any way, and coming back to this breathing practice. So hopefully your jaw feels relatively soft. Inviting your shoulders to drop. If you're seated, a sense of softness. If you're lying down, a sense of your shoulders perhaps melting a little more deeply into the surface you're lying on. I'm going to invite you at this point to focus on the rib cage, your rib cage flaring out. So as you breathe in, this sense of your rib cage expanding. And if it's helpful, really welcome to use your hands. If you're lying down, you can take your hands to the front of the body. If you're seated, you might find you could take your thumbs behind, feeling in the back of the rib cage, your fingers at the front. Just for a few breaths, releasing the arms if they get tired. But beginning to encourage your rib cage to expand with each inhalation. And gently fall back with each exhalation. If it's helpful to use a visualization, few options, perhaps it's the jellyfish. Perhaps it's an opening and closing umbrella. Maybe you prefer to imagine a ball gently inflating and deflating. Resting your hands if you haven't already. And feeling into your nasal breathing. And the movement of your rib cage. And then I'd like to invite you to really begin to slow your breath down. A few ways I can describe this. So it's a sense of your breath becoming very light as it passes in and out through. Another way that might be helpful to imagine It's as if a feather was just floating below your nose. If that feather was dangling below your nose, it would hardly be moving. We're still inviting our ribcage to expand with each inhalation, our jaw to remain soft and our shoulders at ease. Slowing our breath down by feeling hardly any air flowing in and out through your nostrils. And this might be where the feeling of air hunger is beginning to arise if it hasn't already. As we slow our breath right down, there's carbon dioxide building up in our body. And contrary to popular belief, this is a good thing. We need our carbon dioxide to dilate, to open up our blood vessel, so we can increase our uptake of oxygen. We want to avoid forcing this in any way. So if the air hunger feels strong, there's any feeling of anxiety creeping in or heart rate rising, pausing, taking rest. And as you slow your breath right down, you may notice how the movement in your rib cage slows right down. Still using the full capacity of your rib cage, expanding outwards and gently shrinking back. If you would like to, at the end of an exhalation, gently pinching your nose and holding your breath for as long as it feels comfortable to. So again, not forcing anything, only holding your breath for as long as it feels comfortable. So if you would like to, on the next or at the end of the next exhalation, beginning to slowly pinch your nose and hold your breath. Releasing the nose as soon as you feel the urge to take an inhalation, not pushing yourself in any way. And taking a few slow breaths. And then if you'd like to, we're going to take that one more time, but this time we're going to count our breath hold. And I often like to use the count 1 banana. If that makes you smile too much, perhaps you just count 1 second. There's 1 second. So in your own time, at the end of an exhalation, gently pinching your nose and counting your breath hold. Again, it's not about a number. It's just taking it to the point where you feel the need for an inhalation, not forcing anything in any way. Once you've released your nose, taking a few rounds of gentle, slow inhalation and exhalation. If at any point you need to pause to reset, doing so, really tuning into what your body needs here, not forcing anything at all. Trying, if you can, to remember the count, the number you got to. And then halving that count. So if you held it for 8, the half is going to be full. If you hold it for 20, it's going to be 10. So halving that count. And then if you'd like to, at the end of each exhalation, holding your breath for that half count. It's a way of making our breath holds manageable. And so helping with our ratio of carbon dioxide and oxygen. So making it a comfortable pause. So you might like to take 1 or 2 rounds. You might like just to continue for the next couple of minutes. But at each exhalation, if you would like to, taking that comfortable pause. You don't need to pinch your nose. Just gently holding your exhalation for your half count. If at any point the breath holding feels too strong, you feel your heart beating a little faster or anxiety rising, sense of air hunger becoming too overwhelming in any way, stopping, pausing. And maybe you can come back to it later. We're going to continue for about another minute, minute and a half. Resting this technique, if your body's asking you to. If possible, if you're resting, just simply focusing on this soft, slow inhalation and exhalation. So that sense of hardly any air passing in and out through your nostrils. But again, that feels too strong in any way, letting it go. If you're still practicing the breath holding, making this next one your last round. And eventually letting go of any conscious breathing. So if you're still consciously making your breath light, maybe you can also let that go. Allow your breath to travel in and out through your nostrils as it naturally will do at this point. If your eyes have been closed for a little while, you might like to gently warm your hands up, placing your palms gently over your eyelids. Whether you're lying down or seated, you might like to very, very slowly spread your fingers, allowing a little bit of light as you open your eyes in slowly and softly. And then eventually releasing your hands. So today's breathing practice, the aim just slow the breath right down, because we know 5 to 6 breaths a minute is a kind of gold standard. Easier said than done. But finding some different techniques where we can perhaps begin to encourage our breath to slow down. So that light breath, but also focusing on the ribcage expanding. So we know we have that sense of we've got lots of space for the breath, still have lots of space, even though we're slowing the breath down. Sometimes as we slow our breath down, we can have that feeling of overwhelm or anxiety. But if we can tune into the ribcage expanding, sometimes that helps support us or be mindful of all this space we can fill with a breath. So slowing our breath down can be supported by our lung capacity as well. Also with the breath holding, just playing a little bit with our carbon dioxide tolerance. So we know that if our carbon dioxide tolerance is slightly stronger, then there's going to be a more efficient transfer of oxygen into our blood and to our organs as well. So just working with those few different techniques today.